This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. Ready-to-drink cocktails, High Noon, Jack Daniel's Crown Royal. And the Pickle Bar, led by my two personal favorites, the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Joined now by the outstanding Max Starks. Max, how have you been? Welcome to the show. Great to have you with us.
My pleasure as well. Thanks for having me.
How difficult is it to get a read in the month of September on any NFL team because of the limited exposures in the preseason in games?
It's a lot tougher now than it was back when I played, just because everybody's less apt to play their players, to give their players reps. You pay guys a lot of money for the regular season, and you know, a lot of coaches just don't want to expose those guys because they're like, we need to get them through now 17 games in the regular season. And, you know, it's really tough to know what a team is. It usually takes about the entire month of September before you really kind of get a bead on who they are and what their tendencies are, what their philosophy is. You have that quarter of the league turnover, it seems like, every single year with coaching staffs. So, you know, when I look at it, it's just you try and make the best assessment. If you have any insights from them from the previous year, you use that. But you still never quite know what that identity is.
Well, in the opening week, it was the offense that put up 32 points. For a Steeler fan, I'm sure the surprise was giving up the 31 points. What did you see from the Steelers defensively, with credit going to what the Jets did?
Well, I think it was just the ability to utilize everybody on the field. I think, and that's what the football IQ of an Aaron Rodgers adds to a team.
Yeah,
is that whoever's available is going to get the ball. So that means if you step on that field, be prepared, Ben Skoranek, to catch the drag across the middle and score the first touchdown of the season.
Yeah, right.
Jonnu Smith, use the jet sweep, that's a little toss action, and get into the end zone. I think that's really what the biggest thing that I learned from watching that offense is that Aaron Rodgers is going to spread the ball around, and he's had to do that, and that's been the signature thing of his career because he hasn't had that true first-round number one draft pick, wide receiver, or a pair of them like a lot of these teams have now. He doesn't get the Joe Burrow treatment. He hasn't gotten the Joe Burrow treatment in his career. So he's learned how to utilize the quote-unquote lower-round talent or multitude of players to get through games, to get through seasons, and to make somebody out of what a lot of people consider was a nobody. So it was no surprise to see that, but that's the level of acumen that he brings to a team.
Imagine in his prime having Jamar Chase. That'd be pretty good life. And yeah. T. Higgins, not a bad life at all. Now defensively, they gave up points. I want to get to a guy I thought that was a bright spot, though. What does Jalen Ramsey add to what they're doing back there?
Toughness, tenacity. He is a leader by action, and he's a guy who can get under the opponent's skin, and opponents look to try and get under his skin. So when you have all of that attention focalized into a guy like Jalen Ramsey, it allows everybody else to see the example and go try and be the example, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think that's what he brings from them. And he could do it from a multitude of positions, not just being specifically a corner or specifically a nickel or specifically a safety. He does a good mix and match of everything.
So when you look at the defense, okay, moving forward, improvement game 1 to game 2, where do they need to be better?
I think on both sides of the ball, it's run.
Yeah.
It's running the ball and then stopping the run. I think that's where really the most glaring thing is, and it's a universal truth for the entire team. Like, the emphasis on the run game needs to be at the attention on both sides of the ball. And how do we stop it, and how do we generate it? And so I think it's as simple as that. So, and there's little things they can do to do that. You know, it's disengaging from blocks if you're a defensive lineman. You know, not whipping the block on the second level if you're the linebacker. If you're the offensive line, sticking on the – it's funny. They're parallels of each other because the guys couldn't stick on the blocks on the offensive side, and the defensive guys can get off the blocks. So really, that's what I think is probably the emphasis that I'm looking at in this game is how well do you disengage and how well do you stick?
Look, Kenneth Gainwell was a good player for the Eagles. Not a great player, but a good player, and what they needed was functional in his role with Philadelphia. What can he be in Pittsburgh?
Well, I think for Kenneth can be a well-rounded back. I mean, you can use him for a variety of different things. We don't need the biggest bruising, physical, downhill back that, you know, like a Saquon was, you know, is, I guess I should say, or was as a teammate for him. You don't need the Derrick Henry because a lot of other teams still have success without having that Derrick Henry type. So you just need an all-around back that can be in all 3 downs, and I think he is a 3-down back. He can run off the edges. He can run between the tackles. He can catch passes, and he can pass block. So I think for him is just showing that well-roundedness, not just being a check down and screen guy like he was in Philadelphia last year, and really be a true running back. And I think there's an opportunity here with him because of who you have as Jaylen Warren as a running back, smaller type of scat style back, and then of course Caleb Johnson, a more bigger back. So he has a nice role, and he's a really good pass catcher out of the backfield. So he gives you a matchup problem when they want to employ it.
Yeah, obviously in broadcasting Penn State football, I've seen a lot of guys, and I saw Gainwell. He played against Penn State in the Cotton Bowl, so I saw him at Memphis. But I saw Caleb Johnson at Iowa too. And look, he was the feature guy and carried the ball a lot. There were not a lot of times where he had to make plays without the ball, pass blocking, things like that. Is that where he needs to make up time to be an effective NFL player, what he does without the ball?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every back has to learn how to work without it. And for Caleb, because he's been a feature, and let's face it, you know, I don't think it's no surprise here when I say this to you or your audience, Iowa does not have inspiring offensive skill sets. You don't think of Iowa and think of explosiveness, high scoring, exciting. Like, those are words you don't put with Kirk Ferentz' offenses. You use that for the defense. That's reserved for only the defense.
Right. Yep.
So for Caleb Johnson coming in, like you said, he was all they had. I mean, tell me the last time you've seen an Iowa wide receiver go in the top 2 rounds.
I'll get back to you on that. No, I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's interesting because, by the way, for people who realize the first 2 games, Mark Gronowski, the transfer from South Dakota State, is 127 yards passing total to this point, to Max's point on this year's Iowa team. Penn State will play them in the middle of October out there. Okay, so the matchup with Seattle, Sam Darnold is now there. Right. I know you've looked at video. Any difference in what a Seattle offense looks like with him at quarterback as opposed to Geno Smith?
Well, I think, because you don't have a DK there.
That's a big part. Yeah, DK's now on the other side.
Yes. But I think when I look at it, it's a team that's trying to establish the run. They're trying to be a balanced team, trying to utilize the play action, trying to take the same principles that Kevin O'Connell used with Sam when he was in Minnesota, and they're trying to apply that to how they utilize him in Seattle. And, you know, it's a little bit different, right? You know, it's not Aaron Jones in the backfield running the ball for you. You know, it's Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker who are going to be your two main guys, and those guys have been okay backs, but you know, it's a lot of pressure on the quarterback in the Seattle system to make plays and to make some plays with their legs as well. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, listen, had a great game for all intents and purposes, but it's like who's the other guy to take the attention away from him? You know, almost like how we were with the Jets, except for the difference is you don't have a running quarterback in Sam Darnold. Like Sam Darnold's mobile, but he's not a running quarterback.
Right.
And so teams know that, and they can play more press man. They can be, you know, they can disrupt the timing routes because there's no fear of his legs kind of running away. Now, here's what I will say is that there is an opportunity that if they are going to utilize, let's just say, a Jalen Milroe, so to speak,
right?
That could be a complication. If they watch the film from Sunday, this team could be different if you put Jalen Milroe back there for a concentrated package, and you try and exploit that aspect of it.
That's an excellent point, because Milroe certainly would be able to disrupt it because he runs so well. We brought up Aaron Rodgers early in this. What have been your thoughts just on seeing how he has adapted to Arthur Smith, and conversely how Arthur Smith has adapted to Aaron Rodgers and how he plays?
I think it's been a nice compromise thus far. I think the biggest thing is now the offense, particularly the offensive line, has to live up to their Arthur Smith end of the bargain for Aaron.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's going to be. You have to be able to marry the run game. And when you're using two tight end personnel sets and you're using some of what we call 12 personnel, you got to be able to run the ball effectively because it's a loaded box, and you can't depend on Aaron to check you out of it and throw you into a good play or throw a now route to disrupt it just because, you know, you don't feel comfortable enough to run the ball. They should be able to run the ball in any situation. And I think that's where they have to step up with it. But Aaron's been open to it, and Aaron's done a great job of communication with him and Arthur. They spent a lot of time together during training camp and in the off season, just talking about these concepts and talking about kind of what he needs, what he sees versus the expectation of what Arthur has. And it's worked out great. Now, we can't let him get hit as much as we did. He got hit 11 times on Sunday. That can't happen. You can't do that. I don't care what age you are at quarterback. You know, needless to say, even at 40-plus, can't get hit that much. So they've got to do a better job up front of blocking and protecting him in blitz and non-blitz situations, but they have to be able to run the ball because that's what takes the pass rush off. That's what gives Aaron more versatility to even be more dynamic than he is. I mean, he had a calling card for being able to get teams defensively in bad situations. You saw that. The illegal substitution, free plays. I mean, he's the king of all that, right? When he sees the substitution, he knows how to get up there and get on the ball, snap it so you can get the free 5 yards, or you get to have a free busted play. Those are the things that he's good at. But when you don't run the ball, them running up to the line of scrimmage doesn't scare anybody. And so I think that's where that other side has to live up to it. But I think as far as for Arthur and Rodgers, their communication and their kind of marrying of the offense and philosophy has gone well so far in just, you know, one game and obviously throughout the preseason.
Max, in that answer, you referenced the tight ends and you referenced the running game. Old friend Pat Freiermuth is more of a pass-catching type of tight end. Jonnu Smith, excuse my phrasing of this, but he's more of a glorified wide receiver playing tight end. What do they need to do as tight ends to be that sixth blocker in the offensive line that helps out the running game?
Well, I think this is where you kind of see it. You have to be willing. And that's the one thing I can say for both Jonnu and Pat. They're willing blockers. Yeah. They might not be the best at it, but believe you me, they are going to try their butts off. And they're going to fight every time that they get out there to try and create something. It might not have the best success in the world, but they're going to try And that's also why you bring in a glorified right tackle in Darnell Washington as your blocking tight end.
That's right. Yep. Yes. Oh, yeah. No. Oh, every time. And if you get any catches out of him, it's a real bonus. It's like, okay, the blocking guy caught it. But yeah, he is the right tackle +1 over there on that side. T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward, they're the experienced guys up front. And they're still the guys that are out there making plays. What do the younger players have to do to feed off their respective examples?
Well, I think it's just you learn. And learning is the key component. So when you're out there, or I should say not when you're out there, when you're watching from the sidelines, you need to take notes. And that's one thing you look at Jack Sawyer, Y.A. Black, Logan Lee. They're watching what Cam Hayward does. And they're trying to mimic those same skills. And, for Jack, he's watching TJ. He's watching Alex Highsmith because he's that guy. Now, luckily and hopefully we will get Nick Herbig back into that rotation this week because you could tell getting into game shape as well at the beginning of the year is something that's tough.
Yeah, it is.
Both Cam and TJ, as high-bred athletes as they are, they still get tired, still get bloated, especially when you play a team like the Jets that runs the ball as much as they do, and so many things you have to account for. So you saw that kind of be a drawback. You didn't have the rotation, and Jack was in his first game, and he's trying to figure out which way is up as a young guy, and chasing Justin Fields and Breece Hall, and you're trying to escape from guys. I mean, Olaf Fashanu had his way with the edges for the most part of that game, and so I think that's what it really is. It's about mimicking what those guys do well, but also understanding at the beginning of the year, everybody's tired. If you say you're in full game shape on the first game of the season, I don't know what you did, and I'm going to ask you to go take a drug test. But at the same time, it's a process. It's a process.
Yeah, it is. Olu, by the way, is going to be a good player, and I've seen enough of Jack Sawyer in person to tell you he's going to be terrific. One final question. I don't know how often when you played, Max, that you paid attention to the kicker. But what does Chris Boswell mean to this team, and not just at this time, but what he's meant over the years?
So I'm a Marvel kid, Steve, and I grew up. I loved Marvel comics.
Yep.
I love the X-Men, and he's Weapon X. Weapon X. He's the best version of all the mutants. That are special teams. And I think when you really want to appreciate what he's done, just look at week 1 last year in Atlanta.
Yeah.
We lose Cam Johnston, our top punter, great punter. In the game, we have no other punter. There is no Corliss Waitman on the team at this point.
Yep.
Cam beat out Corliss in training camp. They looked at Chris, and Chris like, all right, let's do it. He was like the kicker from the Replacements. I can't remember his name. The Aussie dude.
Yes.
All right. I'm wiry. Right. He just booted a 45-yarder on a cold rope. That's what he meant. And kicked 6 field goals on top of that. He was the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week, week 1 last year. Surprise, surprise. He's that same guy the start of this year. And like you said, that 60-yarder was just a thing of beauty. But that's what he brings to you. To know that all we have to do is get to midfield and we are in his range is a hell of a thing to have. And with that new dynamic kickoff rule, just say the opposing kicker sails it out to the 30, out the back of the end zone. We start at the 35. That's only 15 yards of offense you have to generate, and you can still potentially get 3 points. That is a game changer for any team. And Chris Boswell he is a special teams ace.
Nigel Groff. That was the replacement
Nigel Groff. Yeah, there we go. Except we got smoking cigarettes on the sideline. That's the only thing he does.
Yeah, John Madden. Is he smoking over there? It's like, okay. Hey, Max, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I had such a great time talking to you, and thanks for the insights.
You're welcome. You have a great rest of your week and a good weekend.
Yeah, you too, Max. Max Starks from the Steelers Network. does a great job with the Rob King. A great broadcast that we have with them. All right. So, more coming up on the show today. This half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, waters, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And ready-to-drink cocktails. High Noon Jack Daniel's Crown Royal. Pickle Bar led by the Barrels and the Dills. Indeed, second to none at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
At Memorial Acres, now that kiddos are back in school, the after-school program schedule is now Monday through Thursday from 2:30 till 4:30 for all school-age children. Plus, there are additional programs afterwards each day for special groups, including the Boys Club, Acting Group, Girl Scouts, and homework help for middle school and high school students. Fridays are kids' exercise followed by middle and high school group night. These programs are free for Memorial Acres residents and residents of Section 8 housing in Sunbury. For more info on all programs, call Maggie Kurtz at 570-863-8399.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Nummels Wharf, online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory. Great pre-owned inventory with the all-important Sunbury Motors guarantee. They go over every vehicle on the lot. And a service department, whether it's quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult, they handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. As always, a pleasure to bring in my good friend Mark Brennan, 247 Sports. Mark, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, so through a couple of games, let's talk about the communication part. James Franklin addressed this in his Wednesday get-together with the media. What was your take on the communication part, especially on defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you have to look at it, Steve, is you have two people involved in the primary communication there who weren't here last year, right? You know, Jim Knowles, obviously, he's been in loud environments. I don't want to suggest that that's a problem for him. But Amari Campbell has the green dot, and this is something new for him. I mean, the green dot isn't something new, but being able to hear. And I'm sure you were able to see it from your side of the stadium. For people who don't know, Steve and I are on different sides of the stadium now.
Yes.
But there were times when Amari was like struggling to hear. He was putting his hands over his ears, and players were kind of gathering around him. So that's why you play these early games. So ideally, you get those things ironed out, because I think it might be slightly louder for the whiteout game against Oregon, just a tiny bit. So it's important to get that stuff ironed out. I will say this, Steve, and I know you heard it. Tyler Donahue asked, "Is this similar to what was going on last year?" And I don't think it's similar. I mean, I think last year was a situation where Tom Allen's voice was just so low and raspy that Kobe King could not hear him regardless, and they switched to Dan Connor. Yeah, and you've been around Dan Connor on the practice field. His voice, while if you talk to Dan Connor, person to person in a civilian surroundings, for lack of a better way, he's kind of a quiet guy. But when he's on the field, he is not a quiet human being. And so they had to make that change last year. But I think this is going to be fine, and I think it's good that they actually encountered this before you're in the middle of a game against the number 4 team with 106,000 people who may or may not have spent the day tailgating significantly.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that Kenan Stadium is half the size of Beaver Stadium. And for Amari Campbell, that was the last time he wore a green dot was in Kenan Stadium and not at Beaver Stadium. So that's a little different in terms of your ability to hear.
Yeah.
Offensively, the issue is, to me, is 3rd and short and 4th and short. 3rd and long, actually 3rd and 5 or better, are actually pretty good. They're actually really good on the season on 3rd and 5 or better. What are you seeing in the short yardage situations? Because they're averaging 8 yards a play on 1st down.
Yeah, I think the offensive line, there's something just a tick off. You know, going into the season, Steve, and I probably was getting ahead of myself a little too much, which I tend to do, but I thought this had the potential to be as good an offensive line as they've had since '94 because of the depth. But they haven't imposed their will on people the way that '94 offensive line did, and that's what I'm looking for this week. You know, when you get to that 3rd and 2, to me, it's less about play calling and more about the offensive line just dominating. And I think they have the people to do it. They just have some different people in some different spots. And now's the time to establish that you are able to do that. I mean, you remember back in, the mid-'90s with those great offensive lines, if they had a 3rd or 4th and 2 or 1, they ran the same play with 2 fullbacks, right, over and over and over. It was basically unstoppable. And it goes back to, I was just doing a podcast, and I said, for me, this game for the offensive line goes back to what John Wooden said, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was more about if you execute what you need to do, it shouldn't matter what the other team's doing. So people have been talking about Villanova does this 3-3 and all these odd fronts, and I don't care about any of that. I think it's time for this offensive line to show what it's capable of doing and dominating. I think it still has the ability to be extremely, extremely good, but I think it has to start proving it in those 3rd and short situations or 4th and short situations.
Once they get through the 3rd game, how valuable is the bye week, in your opinion, for self-scout?
I think it's huge. One thing I'd also say, Steve, though, is that, you have proven guys like Drew Aller, who didn't have his best game last week, and Nick Singleton, who, James Franklin said he just has to let it rip. I think this game's important for both of those guys. They're both proven commodities. They've both earned every single benefit of the doubt, everyone. But I do think it's important for them to kind of do what we know they're capable of doing going into the bye, to develop that confidence, and then to build on that so you have more of a realistic self-scout of what you're all about. So, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely important. And I think one of the things that we've learned about Jim Knowles, he doesn't have an ego to him, at least as far as my dealings with him. And I know you've dealt with him more than I have. Yep. But to me, I'm hearing things that and Kotelnicki was the same way last year. He's a different personality, but these guys are open to input from players. They're open to input from other coaches. And when I think you have 2 coordinators of this caliber who are able to take a step back during a bye week and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing from you, Jim, and okay, this is what I'm seeing from you, Andy, I think that's invaluable. And then I think when you throw James Franklin in there, hey, I don't care what anybody says about him is, in tight games or whatever. That guy knows football. And he has a great appreciation for what's going on both sides. I always find it funny when people try to ask him, like, technical X and O's questions, like media people like me. And it's funny. I don't know if people realize this, but Franklin goes off on these, like, really, to me, it's funny, like in-depth stuff that none of us would ever even understand.
Right.
And he's messing with us. And I don't think some people actually realize that. But he's got his mind for football is like something else. So I think you put all those things together, and then, Steve, their assistant coaches, I think they're in a great place coaching-wise. and with the level of communication that they're able to have among each other. That hasn't always been the case the last 5 years or so. There have been some instances where they've had not great communicators, and I think he's done a good job of getting really good communicators in there.
Yeah. It's a small sample size, but how do you feel about the 3 transfer wideouts at this point?
I mean, you have to be – I don't know how you could be anything but if you're a Penn State fan, happy with what you've seen to date. I love the fact that Andy Kotelnicki got Hudson and Pena seriously involved, like, early. Of Penn State's first 4 offensive plays, I think 2 were passes to Hudson and 1 was the end around to Pena. Pena ends up as your leading receiver. You know, people may say, hey, it was Nevada, but they had not had a player with 6 or more catches in a wide receiver, Obviously, Tyler Warren had more than 6 catches. But they hadn't had a wide receiver with 6 or more catches since, I think, Maryland in 2023. So you had 2 of them in that game. You had 6 and 7. And then for Ross to come and do what he did, you know, I think coming off of the injury when they weren't even sure what they were going to have from him early in the season, I think that was really good. Now, the key is consistency. That's what they've been lacking since Parker Washington, right? They have not had a guy who's done it consistently game in and game out. And I think these 3 guys, if you look at their track record, Hudson was extremely consistent last year at UCLA. Ross, maybe a little bit different level at Troy, but consistent. Pena, different offense, obviously, at Syracuse, chucks the ball around a lot more, but consistent. So that's the key to me going forward, is to not have somebody have 7 catches in one game and then none in the next 2. I want to see guys, 4 or 5 catches a game, and Drew Allard being able to spread the wealth among that wide receiver core, because we know what the tight ends could do. You lose Tyler Warren, but, we started to see it last week, getting the tight ends more involved. And we know what the running backs can do, catching the ball out of the backfield.
And then there's the other element. Your better running plays are going to involve your wide receivers blocking. What kind of tone does a guy like Hudson set for that?
I think they all have done a good job. I mean, Hudson, everybody naturally looks at him because he's 6'2", 6'3", and 215 pounds. I mean, you stand next to him, and again, you have. I keep saying that, Steve, but you're at practice all the time, so you know exactly what these guys are like, and you've been around enough players to know who qualifies as kind of physically impressive, and he does. But I think all those guys have done a really good job, and that's maybe why we haven't seen as much of a freshman like Kobe Howard. From all accounts, he was catching everything thrown at him in the preseason, but he doesn't. He's not quite where he needs to be blocking wise, and not quite where he needs to be blocking and whatnot on special teams. So these guys are all veteran players. That's the thing. They brought in guys who are veterans, who have been in programs where you're going to have to block. So I think that's a great point on your part. I think we naturally look at the receiving numbers, but the fact that they're doing such a good job blocking is impressive as well.
What does a healthy Tony Rojas mean to the defense?
Well, to this defense too. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. When you're only playing 2 linebackers so often, and you have a guy who is that athletic and can just – he's really taking advantage, Steve, of having 2 great defensive linemen in front of him. Like, I think it was like 5 or maybe 7 or 8 minutes into the game last week, and he had 6 tackles or something.
Yep.
And that's him being super athletic and knowing where to go. Remember, high school running back, okay? So there's 2 parts to that. Number one, yes, maybe it took him a little bit to get that natural feel at linebacker. But the other side of it is that once you get that, he knows how to attack a hole, right?
Yes.
He knows how to do that. So the key is not getting out of position. But I think the fact that you have Denai Dennis Sutton and Zane Durant playing up in front of him is allowing him to do so many different things. And He is. We saw it last year. I mean, he's a special. He was a special athlete in the college football playoffs, even when he was banged up with the shoulder. And now that he's healthy, he's kind of taking it to another level. And I think Amari Campbell's been. Amari Campbell is not the biggest guy physically, but he reminds me of Mike Hull. And again, Mike Hull was a really, really, really good linebacker. But when you saw him, it's like, wow, this is Mike Hull. This is the guy who's making all these tackles. He's not the tallest guy. He's not the heaviest guy. But we're seeing that you don't have to be that anymore. I mean, you can be kind of the size of Amari Campbell and play really well if you're tough and smart and know where to be.
When the season's over, A.J. Harris may have fewer than 20 tackles. What does it mean to Jim Knowles that he has that kind of corner over there that people really at this moment don't feel like messing with?
Yeah, and that's, somebody asked me preseason, who is a dark horse candidate for All-America honors in the Penn State secondary? And I said Zakee Wheatley. Why am I saying Zakee Wheatley? Because not everybody was talking about him in those terms. But when you look at that secondary, nobody's going to throw at A.J. Harris. So I actually feel bad for A.J. Harris that there are people who understand what that means, similar to Joey Porter a couple of years ago. Yeah. There are people who will really understand that when somebody is that good, you're basically shrinking the field for the quarterback. And who can take advantage of that? The turnover king, Zakee Wheatley. So I think you're going to see – I think it's much like I said, Steve, with Denai and Zane up front, I think A.J. Harris has that ability to make everybody else in the secondary better. And I don't think – I would bet you he doesn't come remotely close to leading the team in interceptions because people aren't going to throw at him, and it's going to give other players the opportunity to get those picks. Now, let's see if those other players are able to step up. I think they will. I think they have great depth in the secondary, but we'll probably have a better feel for that after that Oregon game. I don't have to take it one game at a time. I could jump ahead.
Well, right now the interception leaders total 591 pounds. So
it's unbelievable, isn't
it? two defensive tackles, 591 pounds between them. Those are your two INT guys. And then, of course, there was the fumble recovery. That was Chaz Coleman. When you look at Coleman and the brief sample size that we have, what do you see in his potential? Fancy word of saying you haven't done it before, but his potential moving forward.
Joe Paterno had all these coaching cliches, and you know why they were cliches? Because they were true. They were true. Right. And what was one of them, Steve? A lot of times players make their most improvement between week 1 and week 2.
Yep.
And I don't think I have ever seen a more drastic version of that than we saw with Chaz Coleman, because in week 1 you could see the ability, but it's like he was playing with his hair on fire with no direction, and which is completely understandable. I'm not saying that critically, because he was playing quarterback 2 years ago. And when he showed up, I was down at the when the team visited the Children's Hospital at Hershey, and I saw this kid, and I said to James, "Who is that?" Because he's so tall and long, and this was like 25 pounds ago for him. But to see how he was able to improve from week 1 to week 2, I just think that speaks volumes about Deion Barnes. Deion Barnes was somebody who was in his shoes, albeit as a redshirt, I believe, but somebody who was leaned on heavily as a true freshman. And to see the polish that was added to his game in 1 week, you start to look at this and say, wow, what is the upside with a kid who is this athletic and is clearly just scratching the surface? I give Deion Barnes so much credit, because it's got to be tough for a kid to come out, and he didn't struggle, but they could not have been easy film to watch. And it takes a good coach to put that film on and see him running like way out of his pass rush lane and taking himself out of the play and saying, okay, this is how you need to improve, and then to see it work on the field, I thought that was great.
What can, moving forward, a Gabe Wosu mean, especially in a big game?
You know, James Franklin, he was hyping up Wosu like I had never heard a punter been hyped up before, and Gabe comes out and proves him right. So, yeah, if he can do that with any remote sense of consistency, that is an absolute weapon. I mean, to be able to unseat somebody like Riley Thompson, you know, that kind of speaks for itself because Riley's a good punter.
Yep.
But if he's able to do what he did in that game, and I don't know that we're going to get a great feel for it this week, Steve, because I think punts may be limited once more. But that's, I guess, the next step. It's one thing to do that against FIU or Villanova this week. Let's see how he handles the pressure of the moment. We've seen guys who, you know, John Bruno is the first one who comes to mind. He was better in the pressure moments. He actually got better. I mean, there's an argument that could be made that he was the MVP of the national championship game. So I'm not saying Gabe has to be, you know, that guy, but physically it's unbelievable. I will add, though, I don't think it was a coincidence that he wasn't their special teams player of the week. And I give James credit for this because he was ticked that he had 2 kickoffs go out of bounds.
Yeah,
so as good a job as he did in the punt game, that coaching staff's not going to let you off the hook. If you want to play for a national title, if you think that's the caliber of team you are, you make those kicks out of bounds against a good opponent, that could cost you a game. And James Franklin knows that, and that's why he made such a big deal out of it.
Mark, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
I appreciate it, Steve. You and Jack and the whole team up there doing an awesome job. Great for Penn State, great for Penn State football.
Well, thanks, Mark, and you guys do a great job as well. Thank you for your time.
Yep, bye-bye.
Half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
The days may be getting shorter, but even a shorter day can be a fun day with a new Hyundai from Sunbury Motors Hyundai. Hurry in now because Sunbury Motors Hyundai has 2025 Hyundai Sonata Hybrids with up to $3,750 off. They start at just under $32,000 or choose as low as 1.99% APR for 60 months. 2025 Hyundai Tucsons have up to $3,300 off and start just over $27,000. Or there's also as low as 1.99% APR financing for 60 months. At Sunbury Motors Hyundai, you can lease a 2026 Hyundai Santa Cruz SE for only $380 per month. Remember, all new Hyundais come with Hyundai Assurance and are backed by America's best warranty. 10 years, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. If you want to have a fun day, you have to drive a Hyundai. From Sunbury Motors Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburyhyundai.com. For more details, see dealer or go to HyundaiUSA.com.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.